Well, the way that I have summarized this over the years is to say that capitalism should not be eaten raw. And by that, I mean that, capitalism is not capitalism is not capitalism. And at the risk of sounding a bit like a broken record, I think that what the quote that you admire, or at least has made an impression upon you, what that quote suggests is that there is something in capitalism that does deeply appeal to the human spirit.
Yeah.
And that's why I go back to this principle of economic growth. Without economic growth, we are consigned to scarcity. Much more survival of the fittest, even than these societies that we've been living in for the last 5 decades. Nobody wants to go back to scarcity. Nobody wants to go back to a world in which there isn't enough surplus to educate everyone, to make everybody healthy, to increase the lifespan, to have the arts and the humanities and all of the things that we need for a flourishing civilization, the advancement of civilization. So to the extent that we link capitalism with economic growth, I think right there is a spark, there is a flame that has tremendous validity for all human beings.
Yeah.
No one wants to go back to the Middle Ages or ancient kingdoms where the only way that people survived was on the basis of most people being excluded from the goods of those societies. Through slavery, through gender, through other aspects of, the blood and kin into which they were born. So how do we preserve that flame? And this is where I would say that capitalism is not just always deadly and dangerous, that capitalism, in fact, its resilience comes from its utter plasticity, that capitalism has changed enormously over the ages.
Yeah.
And, mercantile capitalism was not industrial capitalism. And industrial capitalism is not surveillance capitalism. And, we have, and even when we look at industrial capitalism within itself, we began the industrial age, the late 19th, and moving into the 20th century with industrial capitalism as a really violent, destructive operation, destructive of nature, but also destructive of human bodies and destructive of human life. But it was as industrial capitalism became tethered to democratic institutions and we legitimated workers' rights and consumer rights and the laws to oversee and enforce those rights and the institution to oversee and enforce those laws, then industrial capitalism really became something very, very different. So much so that when the Soviet delegations, came during the Roosevelt years to tour America, and during the 40s and 50s to tour America, they were astonished at what they saw. They were astonished at the standard of living that workers enjoyed and their access to education and healthcare and on and on and on. So, we had a period in the 20th century where capitalism, because of, and I still love Polanyi. I still love Carr and the Great Transformation. And, I think many people have restated Polanyi in far more complex terms, but I think Polanyi stated a fundamental truth, the double movement. The market, when left to its own devices, will destroy society. The market must be tethered to, in this conversation, democratic societies, if it is to serve humanity. And we've seen the proof of that in the 20th century. Had it not been for the accomplishments of rights and laws and institutions during the period of the New Deal in the United States, we would have had a 20th century of slavery and serfdom. But that's not the 20th century we had. Although we're skating perilously close to it again now, because of the ways in which the accomplishments of the mid-20th century have been systematically unraveled by the mechanisms and policies of neoliberalism for the last 5 decades. So the bottom line here is that capitalism survives because it adapts. And it is up to us, especially the citizens of democratic societies, to create the structures to which capitalism must adapt.
Yeah.
And it is with the people to insist that capitalism must adapt to the rights and laws and institutions that we insist upon. It is up to us to make those demands. It is up to us to impose those demands on our lawmakers, and through them on our market actors and our business community and our economists and so forth. Ultimately, this is our problem, and the solutions lie with us, with citizens and with lawmakers.